Coming up next, a spectacular story from a true rock classic of the 70s from one of the most underrated bands of the rock era. Initially, this band had relied heavily on a famous production team to write every one of their hits, and they had a lot of hits. But this band was sick of this songwriting team who had total control of them. So they decided to show what they could do. They'd written a good song, but nobody thought it had potential to be a single, except for one executive at the band's record label. He really believed in it. Only thing is, this executive wasn't getting any cooperation to retool the track. So when this songwriting team, this production team, was out of town, the band secretly went into the studio and produced a new version themselves and added synthesizer to it, even though they were a rock band. They proved everybody wrong, as the song became one of the biggest hits of the 70s. In fact, the production team heard the song on the radio when they were away, and they were pissed with what they had done with the song. Coming up, we retrace the steps of this covert operation that led to one of the biggest hits of the 70s internationally, and also a claim from another band that they'd ripped off their hit from a few years before that. Find out what happens next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember watching the antics of Foghorn Leghorn from Looney Tunes, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. I know you'll find something to dig on this channel. Make sure to click the bell so you know when our stuff comes out. Also, check us out on Patreon for even more content and to help keep us a daily channel. Man, I love Foghorn Leghorn. I'll say. I love that. So it's time for another edition of Number One in Our Hearts. This is one of my favorite shows we do on here. It's a show that honors the songs that were so undeniably great, they should have been a number one hit on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. But for whatever reason, be it radio play, label support, lack of marketing, or just sheer stupidity, the song came up a bit short. Today, we're going to celebrate and honor one of the catchiest ditties of the 70s. I'm talking about Fox on the Run by Sweet. Singer Brian Connolly and drummer Mick Tucker recruited bass player Steve Priest to assemble the Sweet Shop in 1968. To give you a little bit of background before we get into the song. But just a few weeks before they released their debut record, they found out that there was another band named the Sweet Shop. So they had to change their name, and they did that. They changed it to the Sweet. After adding lead guitarist Andy Scott, the Sweet hooked up with hitmakers Mike Chapman and Nicky Chinn, and began one of the most successful four-year runs on the pop charts in UK history. I mean, between 1971 and 1974, Chapman and Chinn penned all 11 of the British top 40 hit singles for the Sweet, including their first hit, Funny Funny, Little Willie, Blockbuster, and the Ballroom Blitz. Were also big hits in the US. Success should have been sweet, for lack of a better word, for this quartet. By 1974, they were tired of the perception that they were just puppets to the Chapman-Chinn puppeteers. So when an opportunity presented itself to change that stigma, the band took advantage and covertly re-recorded an album track and reconstructed it into one of their biggest hits, one of the best songs of the 70s. That transformed track was none other than Fox on the Run. At the beginning of the rock era in the 50s through the 60s, the most popular solo artists and groups were essentially the talent that performed material written by somebody else, right? It's one of the main reasons why acts like Buddy Holly and the Crickets and the Rolling Stones and the Beatles were so revered. They created and performed their own material. They didn't use outside songwriters. Now the Sweet, who a few years into their siege on the pop charts became simply Sweet, for short, they craved that same respect from their peers. They wanted to do it. Sweet were rolling along with hit after hit after hit all over Europe and across the pond in America and Canada, but they were becoming restless, artistically especially. The foursome wanted to write, produce, and frankly, manage everything that they put out. Mick Tucker once lamented to a reporter that he and his bandmates felt like, I'll quote, four dissipated old prostitutes churning out computerized pop. And just prior to Christmas 1974, the members of Sweet, they'd had enough. frustrated with receiving subpar songs and slipping in priority within the orbit of Chin and Chapman's roster, which of course featured many artists like Susie Quatro and Mud, their discontent reached a breaking point as the songwriting duo, also serving as Sweet's co-managers, increasingly focused on their ventures in California. They were always traveling. Then something happened. The proverbial puppeteers, Mike Chapman and Nicky Chin, at this point they were once again out of the country attending to some unsweet biz in LA. While they were thousands of miles away, Brian, Andy, Mick, and Steve got a call from the A&R director of RCA Records. The label was reviewing tracks from Desolation Boulevard, Sweet's forthcoming album, and they just didn't hear a song that would keep the band's hit streak alive, in their opinion. The call from the A&R director actually came to Andy's home phone when all four members happened to be together hanging out at his place. The director proceeded to tell Andy that he and his colleagues had a feeling that if they re-recorded the track Fox on the Run, it could be shaped into a hit single. It just so happened that Fox on the Run was written by the band and not by Chin and Chapman. As Andy recalled, the director told him and his bandmates, "We're not getting the right answer from Mike and Nicky, but we really believe that Fox on the Run could be a hit if you re-recorded it." The label director believed the original version rambled and it was just too long. He encouraged the band to punch it up, make it tighter. Now, the band took what the A&R director said very seriously. Despite acclaim from Sounds magazine, which held Sweet's previous LP, Sweet Fanny Adams, as perhaps the finest collection of glam metal mayhem ever laid down on vinyl, the album, primarily composed by the band, it failed to yield further hits, increasing the urgency to lead the way for Desolation Boulevard with a banging track. So there was that. There was a little bit of pressure there. We're going to find out what happened after I mention our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. The glasses I always wear. The coolest frames that Zenni has right now are their blue light glasses with multicolored lenses. First of its kind innovation, Block Plus Tin's technology blocks more blue light than ever, filtering digital screen glare and UV light with 8 different tinted lenses to choose from. Just click on our info button to get yours today, or you can click below. Okay, so a week later, completely on the down low, the quartet went into a recording studio that was recently acquired by Deep Purple's Ian Gillan, and they started to work on a secret operation to overhaul Fox on the Run. To go back to the original version, Fox on the Run was more of a gritty rock track that lacked energy, really. It needed some pizzazz, It needed a new snappy arrangement. Now, Fox on the Run is officially credited to the entire band, but it was really Scott's brainchild. Its theme centered on an unnamed groupie, hence the lines, "You talk about just every band, but the names you drop are secondhand." Now, despite being labeled as produced by Sweet, Andy Scott, as a budding producer, took charge of the session. His main goal was to give the track a more radio-friendly edge. Now, interestingly, the guitarist ended up contributing a crucial element that he really wasn't known for. While the rest of the band had left to put down a few pints at the pub, Andy introduced the pulsating synthesizer sound at the beginning of the song, and he tagged it on to the conclusion as well. There were no synthesizers on the original iteration of Fox on the Run, so the addition of the synthesizer gave it a completely just a different vibe. When the band came back to the studio and heard what Andy had concocted, they flipped out. The clandestine mission was accomplished. RCA hastily released a reboot of Fox on the Run without bothering to inform Chin and Chapman at all, prompting them to hurry and get back on the next plane to England. This duo, they were really pissed, to say the least. They were not consulted about changes to anything on the forthcoming album. But they were also concerned that the band had done something on their own that could lead to their dismissal as the navigating team for Sweet, one of the most popular groups in the UK. Now, upon hearing the news that the band had done a reworking of Fox on the Run, Mike Chapman was really confused. He said, and I quote, "That song is not a hit." He said this to the A&R director. And that's the point. In its original form, it wasn't a hit. Even the band didn't think it was a hit. That's why they weren't happy with Chapman and Chin. Seemed they just put Sweet on autopilot and were not giving them the expert attention that they'd earned, especially during a critical juncture in their career. I mean, with so many hits, they should have had that attention. Now, when Chapman heard the new version of Fox on the Run, he couldn't lie. He was really impressed with what Andy Scott had done with the arrangement on the track. Chapman actually called Andy and gave him props. "Well, you've finally done it, haven't you?" That's what he said. Andy found those words to be a tremendous compliment coming from Chapman. Fox on the Run gained recognition as the first Sweet single penned by the band themselves, and actually departing from the partnership of Nicky Chin and Mike Chapman. It marked their 14th single release overall. Notably, the song soared to the top of the charts in Australia in 1975, holding the #1 position for 6 consecutive weeks. Fox on the Run also topped the charts in South Africa and West Germany, while securing the #2 spot in Canada, Ireland, and the UK. It reached #3 in New Zealand, Austria, Switzerland, and Denmark. Here in the US, it achieved gold status, selling over 1 million units, and it peaked at #5 on the Billboard Hot 100. Ultimately, it tied as the second highest charting song in the States with the Ballroom Blitz, following only Little Willie, which reached #3 in 1972. As many of us are aware, foxy is a slang used to describe someone who's physically attractive. Referring to someone as a fox was really common in the late 60s and 70s, particularly after Jimi Hendrix immortalized the term with his release of Foxy Lady in 1967. Foxy Lady. Fox on the Run is about a specific groupie. All of the band members knew her, but they purposely left her unnamed to protect her. Groupies, of course, a popular topic to write out in rock and roll. I mean, besides Fox on the Run, a lot of other big ones. We just covered one a few months ago, What's Your Name by Skinner. It's also Billie Jean and Dirty Diana by Michael Jackson. Once Bitten, Twice Shy, the Ian Hunter tune that Great White brought back, and a whole lot of Rosie by AC/DC about Rosie from Tasmania. Those are just the ones I can come off the top of my head. Perhaps the most famous groupie that was actually named in a rock song, though, was Sweet Connie, who was doing her act, and Grand Funk Railroads were an American band. Sweet, sweet Connie, doing her act. She had the whole show. Just like there are 2 versions of Fox on the Run, there are 2 versions of Desolation Boulevard. The UK, or the RCA version released in '74, features the original offering of Fox on the Run, a raw interpretation of the song recorded to simulate more of a live performance by Sweet. The UK release album also includes Sweet's cover of The Who's My Generation and Chapman and Chin's composition Turn It Down, which was excluded from the US or capital version of Desolation Boulevard, along with 2 other tracks. Turn It Down was actually the second single off the UK version of Desolation Boulevard, but it struggled to get airplay on the BBC. It was mostly due to the line, "For God's sake," which is kind of interesting, and it stiffed just outside of the top 40 on the British singles chart at #41, surprisingly. Very uncharacteristic for a Sweet single during that period. Many of the biggest rock bands that emerged in the 80s and the 90s were heavily influenced by Sweet. I mean, there's Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Scorpions, Red Hot Chili Peppers, just to name a few. In fact, the Peppers occasionally play Fox on the Run during their live set as a demonstration of their esteem for Sweet. Fox on the Run has also been covered by Girl School, the Nip Drivers, the Replacements, Kiss, the original lead guitarist Ace Frehley, among others. In 1968, though, Manfred Mann released a completely different song that was called Fox on the Run. That one reached #5 in the UK. Didn't do so well here. I think it hit #97. Their song explored a different lyrical theme, focusing on the feeling of being like a fox on the run after a romantic breakup. Had nothing to do with a groupie. Now, of course, titles themselves can't be copyrighted, But Tony Hazard, the writer of the Manfred Mann song, found it in poor taste. He would say, and I quote, "Fox on the Run is such a distinctive title that any writer worth his or her salt would leave well alone." He also criticized it in another interview, saying, "Sweet even replicated the rising harmonies in our song," end of quote. So here's a clip of Fox on the Run against Manfred Mann. What do you think? My take, many songs out there have the same title. It's not a big deal. I mean, how many songs have been called Lady, right? Lady. Fox on the Run has been a favorite nostalgic piece in many films. Detroit Rock City, When in Rome, Catch 44, Lords of Dogtown, The Goods, Live Hard, Sell Hard, and The Black Phone, and Dazed and Confused. A new generation of fans discovered Fox on the Run when it was used in the trailer for the pop culture sensation Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. That led to the song rising to the top of the iTunes rock chart in late 2016. Number one after all those years. After the passing of Connolly in 1997 and Tucker in 2002, two competing lineups of Sweet emerged. Steve Priest's group was centered here in the US, while Andy Scott's band continued to create new music and embark on regular tours in Europe. With Steve's death in 2020, though, Andy Scott became the sole surviving member of Sweet. Andy's prowess for producing records was unveiled in a major way on the reworking of Fox on the Run. When the band and the label decided to do the renovation of Foxy, Sweet's regular producer, Phil Wayman, he assumed he would be at the helm. But Andy, he brushed him off, saying, "We're going to do it ourselves." And we're so glad that he did. Utilizing the trippy ARP 2600 subtractive synthesizer. I mean, that was such a cool move by Andy. It was a very high-tech instrument that had only been out for a couple of years at that time when Andy used it for Fox on the Run. Andy also gave Brian Connolly's explosively vocal that hotter mix that it deserved. And he also, punched up Mick Tucker's drumming and Steve Priest's bass line to give the song more rhythm. He also fattened up the hook, including Steve's Foxy on the Run delivery at the end of the chorus. Now, the lead single from Give Us a Wink, Sweet's follow-up to Desolation Boulevard, the slamming track Action, that climbed to number 15 in the UK and number 20 in the US in 75. Everybody wants a piece of the action. 76, the second single from Give Us a Wink, The Lies in Your Eyes, lost steam at number 35 in the UK. It didn't even chart in the US. It took 2 years and 2 albums later to yield the next big Sweet hit when Love Is Like Oxygen returned the band to the top 10, ascending to number 9 in the UK and number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100 with that irresistible Andy Scott guitar riff. Love is like oxygen. In the aftermath of the massive love that was generated for Fox on the Run, the hit slowly dissipated for Sweet, after they parted ways with Mike Chapman and Nicky Chin. There's no doubt about that. But even though the success on the pop charts waned, the four members of Sweet did what they truly wanted to do. I mean, it's a divorce that happens a lot in an egomaniacal business like the music industry. When an artist gets to a certain level of fame, there's a tendency for them to believe that they no longer need to rely on anyone, or reach a delusional conclusion that they ever did need anyone. They're big enough to make every call for their career. Unfortunately, Sweet was an example of that mentality. When asked about their decision to produce their own records on a BBC feature, Andy Scott summed it up in one succinct statement: "We are the only ones who know what we want." Yeah, as I've mentioned, Sweet had 15 hits, and they were as talented and unique as any band of the era from whence they came. Yet they've been largely forgotten, at least by a lot of people under 40. It's time to rectify that. Let's bring their music back. Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Sweet and Fox on the Run. For sure, a perfect song. What are your memories of it? They really pulled it out. Such a great song. Let's have a great discussion about Sweet. I think they're one of the great underrated bands of all time. We got to bring the new generation up on these guys. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe below. We would love to have you. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friend.